Jonathan, stop right there.
Do you know what they pay a store manager?
The swaps, Jonathan, 5 phones, 5 Bitcoin wallets.
This is Jonathan Katz, a retail store manager who had access to thousands of customer accounts and sold that access for Bitcoin. He missed one thing: the blockchain never forgets, and the FBI followed every payment straight back to him.
I am the one they trusted with those accounts.
The Bitcoin he accepted in May of 2021 was supposed to be untraceable. That was the whole point. 5 payments, roughly $1,000 each. 5 strangers' phone numbers rerouted to a stranger's device, in exchange for what felt like ghost money on a network no badge could touch. But a blockchain is a permanent public ledger. Every transaction, every wallet, every connection between one address and the next, preserved forever in a record that does not delete and cannot lie. Federal investigators followed the coins straight back to the account that received them. The account belonged to him. By March of 2024, he would be standing in Camden Federal Court, pleading guilty in front of a chief judge. Before we go any further, I have a question for you. How many people behind the counter at your phone carrier have the access to take over your entire digital life? Drop your guess in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We cover cases like this every single week, the kind the mainstream press buries on page 9. Jonathan David Katz was born in March of 1981 at Virtua Hospital in Voorhees, New Jersey. His father, Michael, was a regional sales rep for an electronics distributor based out of Pennsauken, the kind of man who lived in his Buick LeSabre between accounts and came home smelling of cigarettes and gas station coffee. His mother, Linda, worked the front desk at a dermatology practice on Route 70. They bought a modest split level on Beechwood Drive in Marlton in 1985, paid $49,000 for it, and that was where Jonathan grew up. One sister, 2 years younger. A father who was rarely home. A mother who held the house together with appointment books and grocery lists. By the time Jonathan was 12, he was already the family's unofficial IT department. He set up the Windows 95 desktop in the den. He ran the phone cord across the carpet so his mother could use the dial-up modem and the kitchen phone at the same time. He figured out how to swap the RAM in the family computer without anyone teaching him. His 7th grade teacher at Marlton Middle School wrote on his report card, in the narrative section reserved for behavioral commentary, that Jonathan was, quote, quietly capable, sometimes too clever for his own good, occasionally prone to shortcuts. He attended Cherokee High School in Marlton, graduated in 1999. Average grades, a few friends, none particularly close. He was the kind of kid teachers remembered as polite but distant, the boy who fixed the AV equipment when the projector bulb blew during the school play. His yearbook quote was a Hunter S. Thompson line about the music business. He did not date much. He worked weekends at a Radio Shack in the Cherry Hill Mall, 20 hours a week, $6.50 an hour, selling cordless phones and rolls of speaker wire to older men who wanted to wire their basements for surround sound. He enrolled at Camden County College in the fall of 1999, planning to transfer to Rutgers for a computer science degree. He never made the transfer. He took a class in network fundamentals, got a C+, took an introductory programming class, withdrew before midterms, and by his 2nd year was working full-time at a Sprint store in Voorhees Town Center while taking 1 or 2 classes a semester. The phones were getting more interesting than the school was. In 2003, he stopped enrolling and never re-enrolled. His first full-time retail job in telecom was at that Sprint store on Eagle Plaza Way. He started in February of 2003, hourly base of $9 an hour plus commission. He was good at it. He could talk to anyone. Older customers liked that he spoke slowly and explained the difference between a flip phone and a candy bar phone without making them feel stupid. Younger customers liked that he knew the specs of every handset on the wall without looking. By the end of 2004, he was a senior sales associate. By 2006, he was an assistant manager. His performance reviews used the language that follows ambitious retail employees through their entire careers. Reliable, results-oriented, consistently exceeds activation quotas, shows strong product knowledge and customer rapport. He moved between carriers twice, once to T-Mobile in 2008, chasing a better commission structure, once back to a different mall location in 2011, when the carrier was bought and rebranded, and his store changed signage 3 times in 18 months. He stayed inside the carrier retail world because by then it was the only world he knew. He could close a sale. He could troubleshoot a porting error. He could pull up a customer's account, look at the screen for 30 seconds, and tell them why their bill was $12 higher than last month. The work was repetitive, and the customers were sometimes cruel, and the pay was modest, but Jonathan kept showing up. In 2013, he was promoted to store manager of a corporate retail location in the Marlton area. Annual salary just over $52,000, plus a quarterly bonus tied to store activations and accessory attach rate. He bought a small condominium off Brick Road for $187,000 and moved out of his parents' house at the age of 32. He drove a 2010 Nissan Altima. He had a girlfriend for a while, a hygienist named Stacy from a dental office 2 doors down from the store. The relationship ended in 2016, amicably enough. He started spending more time online. He started reading about cryptocurrency around the same time, in the back half of 2017, when Bitcoin made the front page of every business section in the country, and people who had never heard of a blockchain were suddenly arguing about it at Thanksgiving dinner. By 2020, he had a small wallet of his own. By 2021, he had a username on a private Telegram channel where people traded usernames, rumors, and occasionally more than that. His handle on the channel was Luna. Here is what a manager at a corporate-owned wireless store can do. Every major American carrier maintains an internal customer account system that field employees access from a workstation behind the counter. Sales associates can sell phones, activate new lines, process accessory purchases, and look up the basic details of any account in the carrier's customer base. Their access is limited. They can read most fields and modify a narrow set of them. They cannot, for example, simply walk up to a terminal and reassign a phone number to a new SIM card. That action requires a higher tier of permission. Managers have that permission. A store manager, by the nature of the job, is authorized to handle the requests that escalate past the front line. A lost phone, a stolen phone, an upgrade where the porting process has hung, a customer standing at the counter with a brand new device, asking the manager to please move their existing number onto the new SIM so they can walk out the door with the phone they just bought. The policy framework is simple and reasonable on its face. The manager can swap a SIM number associated with a customer's account. The manager can do so only at the customer's request. The customer must be present, must provide identification, must answer the security questions tied to the account. The system trusts the manager to enforce those rules. There is no independent verification at the moment the swap is executed. There is no second employee who has to confirm the customer is standing there. There is no biometric check on the customer's identity. The carrier's computer simply records that a manager with valid credentials executed a SIM swap on a specific account at a specific time. The record assumes the manager followed policy. The whole architecture of the retail floor rests on that assumption. This matters because of what a phone number has quietly become in the last decade. A cellular phone number is no longer just a way for people to call you. It is the master key to your digital identity. Banks send password resets to your phone. Email providers use it as a backup recovery method. Cryptocurrency exchanges use it as a two-factor authentication checkpoint. Your social media accounts, your investment accounts, your medical portals, each of them was designed on the same flawed assumption, which is that a phone number reliably identifies the person who controls it. Whoever holds the SIM holds the number. Whoever holds the number holds the codes. Whoever holds the codes holds the accounts. A SIM swap, executed correctly and silently, takes 30 seconds at a terminal. The victim's phone goes dark. They look at the screen and see no service. They assume it is a network outage, or a billing issue, or that they need to restart their handset. By the time they walk into a store to ask what happened, The attacker has already drained the bank, the wallet, the inbox, and the social account. The window is narrow. The damage is fast. The trail, on the carrier's side, leads back to the manager who clicked the button. The arrangement that Jonathan Katz entered into in the spring of 2021 was not, in his own mind at the time, a crime in the traditional sense. He was not selling drugs out of a back room. He was not skimming the till. He was sitting at a terminal he was authorized to sit at, doing an operation he was authorized to perform, in a system that did not care whether the customer was actually present. The only difference was that the request was coming from a telegram message instead of from across the counter. The co-conspirator was a person Jonathan knew only by a handle. The federal information identifies the partner only obliquely. The arrangement was simple. The partner would send a name, a phone number, and a target SIM identifier. Jonathan would log into the corporate system from his manager workstation, pull up the customer account, confirm the line was active, and execute the swap. The number would jump from the victim's SIM to the partner's device within seconds. The partner would then move quickly, before the victim noticed the dead phone, to seize whatever digital territory the number unlocked. Email, social media, cryptocurrency wallets, anything tethered to text message verification. Payment was in Bitcoin. The rate was approximately $1,000 per swap, paid to a wallet address that Jonathan controlled. He believed, as many people without a deep technical grounding in blockchain technology believe, that cryptocurrency transactions were anonymous. He believed the wallet was a kind of digital glove. He believed the absence of a name on the transaction meant the absence of a trail. The first swap happened on or about May 10th, 2021. The federal information filed in his case dates the conduct to that day. The victim was an account holder with the carrier identified in court papers only as Company 1. Jonathan was at the store. He had a customer at the counter, a man buying a tablet. He completed that customer's transaction. He waited until the floor was quiet. He pulled up the target account, ran the swap, and went back to his lunch. The whole operation took less than a minute. 3 days later, he did it again. A different victim, a different account, same procedure, same Bitcoin payment routed to the same wallet, then again, then again. The pace was deliberate, not frantic. He was not greedy in the way greed normally looks. He did not swap 50 accounts in a day. He picked off 5 over a defined window, then stopped, the way someone who thinks they have figured out a small, clean way to make money on the side might pace themselves to avoid attention. He told no one at the store. His shift lead, a 26-year-old man named Connor, noticed nothing unusual. The store's regional manager, who visited every 2 weeks for performance reviews and inventory spot checks, noticed nothing unusual. Jonathan continued to lead the morning huddles. He continued to pull the closing reports at night. He continued to ask new hires, in the tone of a manager who had been doing this for 18 years, whether they had remembered to log out of the activation terminal before stepping away. The lifestyle changes were small enough that no one around him noticed. He ordered a new mechanical keyboard for his home setup. He bought a slightly nicer monitor for the second screen at his desk. He took an extra long weekend in late May, drove down to Cape May with no particular plan, and stayed at a small inn near the lighthouse for 3 nights. None of it was extravagant. None of it was the kind of spending that triggers questions. $5,000 in Bitcoin, spread over a few weeks, did not buy a sports car. It bought a man who already had a decent life, slightly more breathing room inside that life. Inside the carrier's systems, the swaps left their fingerprints. Every SIM change was logged. The manager credentials were recorded. The timestamps were recorded. The originating IP of the terminal was recorded. The system did exactly what it was designed to do, which is to assume that a manager executing a swap at a corporate terminal was doing so legitimately. The record sat in the carrier's database, untouched and unexamined, while the lives on the other end of each swap began to come apart. The public record does not name the moment that turned this from a quiet arrangement into a federal investigation. The Department of Justice press release is silent on the trigger. What the documents do confirm is that the FBI took the case, that the Newark field office worked the investigation, and that the spine of the evidence was the Bitcoin trail. The pattern of cases of this type suggests, at minimum, that at least one victim reported the fraud to the carrier. The carrier reviewed the SIM-swap logs. The logs showed a single manager's credentials on multiple unauthorized swaps in a tight window, and the carrier's internal fraud team flagged the cluster to federal investigators. What is documented is that by some point in late 2021 or early 2022, federal agents had identified Jonathan Katz as the employee responsible for the swaps. They had the carrier's logs, they had the credentials trail, they had the timestamps, but they did not yet have the part of the story that would close the loop. They did not yet have proof that he had been paid for the work. The carrier's logs could show that a manager had executed unauthorized swaps. They could not by themselves show motive. That gap is where the Bitcoin comes in. Investigators obtained the wallet addresses connected to the swaps from cooperating sources on the receiving side of the transactions. They traced the outbound payments. Cryptocurrency forensics in 2021 and 2022 had matured to the point where a competent federal team with the right tools could follow a chain of transactions through multiple intermediate wallets and identify the exchange account that ultimately received the funds. Most retail cryptocurrency exchanges, by federal regulation, are required to verify the identity of their customers. They collect names, they collect addresses, they collect social security numbers, they collect bank account information. When investigators followed the Bitcoin home, the home was an exchange account registered in the name of Jonathan David Katz, Marlton, New Jersey. The same Jonathan David Katz whose manager credentials had executed the swaps. The same Jonathan David Katz who lived in the condominium off Brick Road, who drove the Nissan Altima, who had been an employee of the carrier for years. The wallet and the worker were the same person. The blockchain had done what the blockchain always does. It had remembered. The FBI's Newark field office, under Special Agent in Charge James E. Dennehy, took the lead on the case. The matter was assigned to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey, specifically to the office's cybercrime unit, where Assistant U.S. Attorney Dong-Ju Lee picked it up. By the time agents were ready to move, they had built a case that was almost embarrassingly complete. They had the carrier's records of every unauthorized swap, with the manager credentials, the timestamps, and the originating workstations. They had the corresponding victim accounts, with the records of unauthorized access that followed each swap. They had the email recovery attempts. They had the cryptocurrency wallet logs. They had the exchange records showing the funds settling into an account in Jonathan's name. They had the IP addresses connecting the exchange account back to the residence on Brick Road in Marlton. If you've made it this far, you already understand why these cases matter. The investigation is done. The plea is next. If you appreciate the way this channel breaks down the technical side of these crimes without dumbing them down, subscribe and hit the bell. We do this every week. These stories deserve a careful audience. What they did not have, and what investigators in cyber cases always want, was a confession in the suspect's own voice. They did not need one. The evidence stack was already overwhelming. But the way the case was finally framed, in the federal information that was eventually filed, made a confession almost redundant. The information charged a single count of conspiracy to gain unauthorized access to a protected computer under 18 U.S.C. Section 371, with the underlying object being a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act at 18 U.S.C. Section 1030 A, 2, C, and C, 2, B, I. The statute is technical. The factual basis behind it was very simple. He used his manager credentials, which existed only because he was trusted by the carrier and by the customers whose accounts he was authorized to touch, to access those accounts without authorization and to enrich himself in cryptocurrency. The victims, identified in the court papers only by initial or by description, were 5 individuals in total. They are not publicly named. What the record does confirm is that each of them lost control of their phone number, that each loss of control led downstream into other accounts, and that each was the direct consequence of a swap executed from Jonathan's manager terminal. The 5 together represented roughly $5,000 in Bitcoin paid to him, about $1,000 per life. The case did not end with a dramatic raid on the store. There is no footage of agents rushing the activation counter at lunch hour. The confrontation, when it came, was procedural and quiet, which is how most white-collar federal cases actually end. Agents executed a search warrant at the residence on Brick Road. They imaged the devices in the home, the desktop in the den, the laptop on the kitchen counter, the phones charging on the nightstand. They walked out with hardware in evidence bags and paper inventories handed to Jonathan at the door. He was given the opportunity, through counsel, to cooperate. His attorney was a Camden-based federal defense lawyer who had handled a number of computer crime cases in the district. The conversation between defense and prosecution was, by all accounts, brief. The evidence was what it was. The blockchain trail was what it was. The carrier's logs were what they were. There was nothing meaningful to fight at trial. The only question was whether the plea would come early enough to matter for sentencing. The dialogue that mattered in this case did not happen in an interview room. It happened in a courtroom. On March 12, 2024, Jonathan Katz walked into the Mitchell H. Cohen Federal Courthouse in Camden, New Jersey, in a navy suit and a plain tie, and stood at the defense table before Chief U.S. District Judge Renee Marie Bum. Judge Bum: Mr. Katz, do you understand the charge that has been brought against you? Katz: Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bum: And do you understand that you have agreed with another person to access a protected computer without authorization, and to do so for commercial advantage or private financial gain? Katz: Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bum: Did you, on or about May 10th, 2021, use your manager credentials at your employer to execute SIM swaps on customer accounts without those customers' authorization? Katz: Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bum: And did you receive payment in Bitcoin in exchange for those swaps? Katz: Yes, Your Honor. Judge Bum: How do you wish to plead to the charge of conspiracy to gain unauthorized access to a protected computer? Katz: Guilty, Your Honor. The whole exchange took less than 15 minutes. The Chief Judge accepted the plea. Sentencing was scheduled for July 16, 2024. The maximum penalty under the statute was set at 5 years in federal prison and a fine of up to $250,000, or twice the gain or loss, whichever was greatest. He left the courthouse on his own, walked across the parking lot, and got into the same car he had driven to work for years. The carrier identified in court papers only as Company 1 fired him before the plea was entered. The internal investigation, once it had been routed back from the federal side, took about 11 days. He surrendered his manager credentials. He surrendered his store keys. He left the building through the same back door he had used 1,000 times. His replacement was a man named Devin, who had been an assistant manager at a different location